The most powerful man in the city was dying, and nobody could save him. Marcus Ashford sat in his penthouse hospital suite overlooking the glittering skyline he had conquered, his body betraying him in ways his empire never had. 20 specialists had examined him. 20 brilliant minds from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and Mayo Clinic had run every test modern medicine could offer. They had prodded, scanned, biopsied, and theorized. They had filled his veins with experimental treatments and his medical charts with technical jargon that meant nothing because none of it worked. The tremors in his hands were getting worse, the headaches were blinding, the episodes where he forgot his own daughter's name were becoming more frequent, and the billionaire who had built a tech empire from nothing, who had negotiated with presidents and moved markets with a single tweet, was terrified. His daughter Rebecca sat beside his bed every evening, her eyes red from crying, watching her father fade in slow motion. She had liquidated assets, called in favors, flown in experts from 3 continents. Nothing changed. The diagnosis remained the same, a rare neurological condition with no known cure, progressive and terminal. Marcus had 6 months, maybe less. The irony wasn't lost on him. He could buy anything in the world except more time. If you believe that sometimes the answers we need come from the most unexpected places, if you believe in the power of kindness and paying attention to what others overlook, please hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel, because what you're about to hear will restore your faith in humanity. It was a Tuesday night when everything changed. The hospital floor was quiet except for the rhythmic swish of a mop across tile. James Morrison pushed his cleaning cart down the corridor, his movements practiced and efficient from 5 years of night shifts. He was 42 years old, raising his 10-year-old daughter Mia alone after his wife had passed from cancer 3 years earlier. The janitorial job didn't pay much, but it had health insurance and let him be home when Mia got off the school bus. He had once been an engineer, had once had dreams of innovation and impact, but life had other plans. Now he found dignity in keeping the hospital clean, in being invisible but essential. James had been assigned to the executive floor for 2 weeks, and he had noticed Marcus Ashford. How could he not? The man's suite was like something from a luxury hotel, but James could see past the expensive furnishings to the suffering within. He had watched the parade of doctors come and go, had overheard fragments of conversations through the door. He had seen Rebecca crying in the hallway at 2 a.m, and he had quietly brought her coffee without saying a word. Just a gentle nod of understanding from someone who knew what it meant to watch someone you love slip away. But tonight, something was different. As James cleaned the hallway outside Marcus's suite, he heard a particular kind of groan, a sound he recognized from his wife's final months. He paused, debating with himself. He was just the janitor. He had no business interfering. But that sound, that specific tone of suffering, triggered something in his memory. He stood there, mop in hand, his heart racing with the weight of a decision. He knocked softly on the door. Rebecca answered, her face exhausted and hopeless. James apologized for the interruption, his voice quiet and respectful, but he asked if he could speak with her for just a moment. There was something about his sincerity, perhaps, or maybe she was just desperate enough to listen to anyone, but she stepped into the hallway. James told her about his wife, about how she had suffered from severe headaches and tremors that doctors had initially misdiagnosed as a neurological condition. He described symptoms that sounded eerily similar to what he had overheard about Marcus's case. But his wife's problem had actually been something else entirely, something the specialists had missed because they were looking in the wrong direction. She had been suffering from severe mercury poisoning from old dental fillings, combined with a rare genetic inability to process heavy metals. The symptoms had mimicked a neurological disease perfectly. Once they had discovered the real cause and started chelation therapy to remove the metals from her system, she had improved dramatically. She had lived another 5 good years before the cancer took her, but those years had been a gift that almost didn't happen.
Rebecca stared at this janitor who had just shared something so personal, so specific.
She asked him why he thought this might be relevant to her father. James admitted he couldn't be certain, but he had noticed something the doctors might not have considered. He had been cleaning Marcus's suite for 2 weeks, and he had observed that Marcus drank exclusively from an antique silver cup, a family heirloom that sat on his bedside table. James had polished it several times and noticed unusual tarnishing patterns. He had also overheard Marcus mention to a visitor that he had recently had extensive dental work done overseas just before his symptoms began. The timeline troubled James. The combination troubled him more. It seemed far-fetched, and Rebecca knew the doctors would dismiss it as the well-meaning but uninformed suggestion of someone outside the medical field. But she also knew that 20 experts had found nothing actionable. What did they have to lose? She thanked James, and the next morning she insisted the medical team test her father for heavy metal toxicity, specifically mercury and silver. The doctors were skeptical, even condescending about where the suggestion had originated, but Rebecca Ashford had inherited her father's determination. She made it clear the test would happen. 3 days later, the results came back. Marcus. Ashford's mercury and silver levels were dangerously elevated. Further investigation revealed that the dental work he had received, combined with his use of the antique silver cup and a genetic predisposition to poor metal metabolism, had created a perfect storm of toxicity. His symptoms were not from an incurable neurological disease. They were from poisoning, and poisoning could be treated. The transformation began within weeks of starting chelation therapy and removing the sources of contamination. The tremors decreased. The headaches lessened. Marcus's mental clarity returned like fog lifting from a valley. The man who had been given a death sentence was given his life back, not by the most expensive doctors in the world, but by a night shift janitor who paid attention, who cared enough to speak up despite every reason to stay silent. Marcus insisted on meeting with James properly. When they sat down together, the billionaire asked the janitor why he had taken such a risk, why he had bothered to say anything when it wasn't his place. James explained simply that he had watched his wife suffer, had learned hard lessons about advocating for the people you care about, and when he heard those sounds coming from Marcus's room, he couldn't ignore what his instincts were telling him. He said that we all have knowledge and experiences that matter, regardless of our job titles, and sometimes the most important thing we can do is share what we know, even when it feels presumptuous. Before the story ends, I want to ask you something. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that every person has value and wisdom to offer, please take a moment to leave a comment below telling us about a time when someone unexpected made a difference in your life. Your story might inspire someone else today. Marcus didn't just thank James. He investigated the man's background and discovered the engineer who had given up his career to care for his daughter. He offered James a position in his company's research division, with hours that would work for his family and a salary that would change their lives. But more than that, he established a foundation in James's late wife's name, dedicated to supporting medical advocacy and training healthcare workers to listen to observations from all staff members, not just doctors. He created a scholarship fund for the children of hospital support staff, ensuring that kids like Mia would have opportunities regardless of their parents' job titles. The story of how a janitor saved a billionaire's life spread through the hospital, then the city, then the world. But for James Morrison, the real miracle was simpler. He had honored his wife's memory by using what her suffering had taught him. He had spoken up when it mattered. And he had proven that wisdom and compassion are not reserved for those with degrees on the wall or titles on their doors. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you never saw, the one whose name you didn't know, the one who was there all along, paying attention in the quiet hours when everyone else had given up. Marcus Ashford recovered fully. He returned to his empire, but he ran it differently now, with humility and awareness that value exists in unexpected places. And every morning, he drank his coffee from a simple ceramic mug, a reminder that the most precious things in life cannot be bought, only recognized when someone cares enough to see what others have missed.